And as I promised over lunch, I went around the table and got questions. There's like 17 of those, and I think you have a flight to catch, I'm assuming, yeah? But the fortunate part is I was able to group them and kind of pick the themes out so that we can have a crisp Q&A. So first of all, again, I'm going to start off with the simple question, which is what we heard today from government, industry, panels, and all of you. What additional perspectives do you want to share? Anything that we have not covered so far that you want to highlight? Round the table first, and then we can get into the more detailed questions.
So I guess I'll start. One of the things that has always been in the back of my mind with all of this work and why we're pushing it and why we think the U.S. government's going to benefit greatly from this is, as I mentioned in my opening keynote today, the need for security as part of the DoD's use of these technologies. And I think that's expanding DoD has, we kind of had an extra burden because of the types of operations and the classification, security, and posture we have to take. But what's nice about this, and what's nice about 5G already, is because it's pushing into more markets that have critical aspects to them and life-saving, life-critical aspects to them, telesurgery, telemedicine, connected vehicles, all these things. If something goes wrong, then it could be catastrophic. So taking security seriously we're seeing that in the 5G world already. So that's great. We're already benefiting from that. What we're trying to do now is apply even more layers of security. I mentioned zero trust architectures and making sure that those are embedded into our systems. But even if you think about the kind of the cyber security aspects of the work we do, you don't solve cyber, you address it, and you constantly address it. And open source has proven to be the best way to do that at scale, and when given the proper, I keep saying the proper governance and management structures and maintenance structures around them, making sure that these projects are funded and that their maintainers are actually appropriately compensated so that they're invested in the work they do, they're thinking hard about the code contributions, they're setting up the infrastructure for full CI/CD, security testing, static analysis testing. All those things, as we adopt those, and as as the open source community has really built a lot of those tools, and using those to maintain code bases, that's really critical for us to be able to better certify, better understand, and trust in the code that's being deployed for those purposes. So I don't think I hit on that enough in my opening keynote.
Excellent. Yeah. No, security is on top of mind. I mean, that's why we are all here. But that's good. Thank you for covering. I think that was definitely covered, but not at the level you just did. So thank you. What else do you think is missing, or have we not covered, or what else do you want to highlight?
So I think I'm going to add a little bit to what Tom just talked about in terms of security. So recognizing where I came from and sort of my vantage point now, right? So the money that we have is for the public good, for commercial use, and recognizing that part of our purview in the congressional statute that we have for the Innovation Fund, security is part of that, right? And understanding how do we apply things like ZTA principles to what we are investing in and how things are getting developed. So it's security by design, and making sure that it's important for what we're doing, and we're continuing to push that, and it will be part of sort of the requirements as we push forward for our additional opportunities for funding. And then the other plug I would make is we've got quite a significant amount of money we're looking to put out this year, and there's lots of opportunities for industry to get a bite at the apple. So I would ask that folks pay attention to NTIA.gov. There's going to be opportunities very shortly, and then a second one hopefully before the end of the calendar year. So. Excellent.
I mean, that's why these folks are here. They stayed. People who left.
No money.
You saved the juicy part like to the 4 o'clock session. Beautiful.
Yeah, that's why, because we want to keep everyone here, right? So I think one of the things that I briefly touched upon earlier, I think it's the partnerships, and I think all these efforts that the government agencies trying to push forward. I think we need a lot of partnerships with industry and the international partners. Now, the NSF in particular has been trying hard to get industry to participate in some of these initiatives. Starting from rings is probably one of the best examples, but also we are now looking at the next phase of rings and getting the industry to involve. Now, the rings is just one program led by SAIS. Within TIP, we have many programs, and I want to emphasize that unlike most of the other NSF directorates, which people normally expect the funding will go to the universities, the TIP mostly funds industry, whether it is big or small. And traditionally also you would think that, oh, the NSF will fund the small businesses. No, that's the SBIR STTR program that has been there forever. The TIP initiatives actually funds the big businesses, big companies. Our focus is to make an impact, and whoever can make that impact, we're going to fund. So I want to make it clear so that actually industry look at some of the opportunities that TIP offers and come to the table so that actually we can build those partnerships. I specifically comment we had more than 200 preliminary proposals for break-in law with a lot of big and small companies, and that's really good. But we want to keep going, and I hope that more partnerships will be built, just like the rings first round. Plus, we also want to build the international partnerships. That is, the telecom is a global business, and we do need to make sure that we have like-minded countries actually coordinate the actions, coordinate the standardization efforts, coordinate the technology development efforts, so that actually we all benefit by those joint efforts. And for that also, the NSF has been developing various collaborations and the signing MOUs with various countries, and we hope to expand those efforts as well. So I would strongly, strongly encourage our global partners as well as industry partners to reach out to us and look at our programs so that actually we can coordinate and build on these efforts. And finally, many of these efforts, as I said, are coordinated among different government agencies. As you can see in this workshop, we have various the setups where we actually coordinate among agencies, so we can actually leverage each other's the funding budgets so that actually you know the money can go further.
All right, great. So I heard three things. Just to repeat, that was loosely covered, but you wanted to emphasize. Open source security by design, more funding coming in to jumpstart this ecosystem, NTIA, NSF, and many more, and partnerships, both horizontal and across the countries, right? So thank you. All right, so the next question, or now the series of questions, I don't know who asked it, but I'll just keep going, and any one of you are willing, can answer. So. There's generally a theme of, interfacing with agencies or government, U.S. government, I'll say. But this one is more specific, which is there a central agency or is there a central way, or how can universities interface with government cleanly without necessarily going to, 20 different things? Part of the question is there's a shortage of pipeline of students in networking. Primarily because everybody thinks AI ML is cool and they go and do data science, right? Including my daughter, like they just went that way. And then the students who are there, master's or PhD, they would do the thesis or they'll work on some of these programs. most of the times they download the code, consume it, and they're done. They don't move on and sustain the project or things like that. So there's a whole university ecosystem that we're tapping for one way, but if there is a easier way to work with the government, simplified way, then would love to hear your thoughts on that. I don't know who to direct this to.
Yeah, so workforce development has been a big part of my thinking since I got into this role, and it's a horizontal and vertical structure when you think about the workforce challenge. So vertically, you first have to start out with the kind of telecom operators and kind of field agents, and then you get to the network architectures and systems designers, the engineers who build the next capabilities, and then the kind of higher level, just call them the PhD levels, like thinking about those real innovations that are going to come next. So you got to work on all those layers and make sure that you're engaged in those and giving the right opportunities. By which I mean making sure that there's a market out there, that there's commercial capabilities for them to lean into and benefit from. Then you have what I look at as horizontally is who are we really engaging to fit those different vertical layers. There's industry. There is a university, and from the local community colleges to the technical universities to the tier 1 research universities, you got to be able to address all those. There's, again, like I said, industry and making sure that we're engaged across U.S. industry, but really with our partners and allies, and back to the international bent to this and the talent that they provide for us. I also look within the DoD, making sure that we're providing a structure within the DoD to grow the internal workforce. So we kicked off a plan, or really a project Monday with the Naval Postgrad School. So I got to go down to Monterey to do that, so we can raise people through that process, through the educational process within the DoD. We're also building relationships with the National Guard, and how do we actually use the talent pool of the National Guard, train them up, use them because they're a lot of our communicators and a lot of our infrastructure support. So a lot of opportunities there. That's how I see us engaging in this. Now, then there's, of course, the incentives. How do you make sure that people are incentivized to work on this? And I think one of the classic challenges that we have in this world is the network is so critical, but no one thinks about it until it fails. Right, so the classic case, or the recent case really that I use is last year when the super typhoon Mawar hit Guam. My buddy, Frenchie Farreau, the ATAG for the Air National Guard out in Guam, he gets woken up. The governor has tapped him to be the point person to rebuild the infrastructure of Guam. So the first thing he does, he picks up his cell phone. Doesn't work. Suddenly, he becomes a true believer in how the telecommunications networks are critical for creating for water, for power, for food, all those services. We're just dependent on that. So now he has this incentive investment, and it's critical. It really is critical technology and infrastructure here. And so what I would say too is that none of this AI ML future really matters unless we get 5G and 6G right.
That's quite true. Quite true. All right, so if we move to the next question, maybe this one's for Amanda. There were a couple of questions on this topic, which is, what's the best way in your, how do you envision the best way to align all the OTIC efforts, including sharing the results and, having more periodic meetings like this one or whatever, right? But what are you thinking on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So opportunities like today are fantastic, where we can highlight some of the work that we're sponsoring and get it out to a larger community that these resources are available. So as much as we can leverage folks like yourselves or other venues, I think we will definitely do that. But in terms of responsibilities of the grantees, they are going to be required to meet at least yearly. So we will be bringing together all 17 awardees to basically put them in a room and share the statuses of the work that they're doing, and the hope is to have that cross-pollination. So a concept of opening that to a broader industry group, potentially international participation as well, right? Some of the things like GCOT. We've got an agreement there. We could potentially invite our international partners to understand and apply lessons learned to their laboratories they might have. So this is definitely something we are continually thinking about, and how we make the best use of the investments that we're making. So yeah, NTIA is definitely going to have those collaborative events, and we appreciate opportunities like today.
Very good. That was very crisp. Thank you. The next question was, maybe SJ could take that or whoever, but we've not talked about rural broadband in this, right, and rural connectivity. How do you envision, or I mean, there's definitely broadband programs that the government has funded, sponsored, supported, all about but how do you include them in this next generation or NXG?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, I think the next generation of wireless networks has to look at where the business opportunities are. And one of the opportunities is in the rural broadband. To provide that coverage, I think the satellites has to be an integral part of the network, because otherwise in thinly populated areas is not viable, and it's not reasonable to expect that's going to happen. They're putting, cellular networks. So I see that as Starlink and other satellite companies trying to do, the providing service in those areas through LEO satellite can be probably one of the most potential approaches. However, I think it probably need the integration with the terrestrial networks, so that actually you can provide other services, not just the broadband access, but also enable other
emergency services.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what I think, and I think there is an opportunity for that type of technology development.
Yeah, if I can add to that, because I think the same thing, the LEO satellites, but really this whole non-terrestrial networking concept, and really what it comes down to in my mind is, and I'm an RF guy by trade, by backgrounds, but I'm going to say something that is anathema to my field. The physical layer doesn't matter. They all matter, right? It is the network really that controls it, and all of the access points and potential. So you have to have heterogeneous access to terrestrial to layered non-terrestrial networks. You have to have heterogeneous access to spectrum, so that with the physics of spectrum, lower frequencies propagate better, but you don't carry as much data. Higher frequencies propagate worse, carry a lot more data. How do you actually deploy all these systems effectively, and then continuously drive down the cost to make sure that the approach to using whichever spectrum and whichever modality of communications is available to you at any time? This overlaps with our ubiquitous, secure, and instant access line of effort that I talked about this morning. So that has a specific purpose for the DoD use, but the fallout of that technology should help with those types of rural issues.
Yeah, the classic coverage versus capacity question. So maybe sticking on to the up and down the stack, there was a question on left to right also of the architecture, which is there's tons of data at the edge. And edge computing is evolving significantly. In fact, some of the market research indicates edge computing will be 4 times the size of cloud computing by 2030. So, and edge computing has been embraced by most of the industrial IoT, manufacturing, et cetera, et cetera. So the question came out was, if we throw bandwidth at the problem, 6G, 7G, whatever, along with latency and things like that, why would you not think, or have you thought of different architectural approaches to take advantage of this edge compute revolution, where you may want to think of solutions differently, right? As you open up the RAN, distribute the radio from the servers and things like that. Just
If I may start, try to keep it crisp, but a historical perspective, we're kind of elastic, back and forth between centralized computing and edge computing. But let me put it in the context of artificial intelligence. When the original kind of expert systems were just designed, it was when you actually had access to a mainframe that had enough memory and enough compute to actually manage the complexity of those expert systems. And then we started to distribute, PCs and workstations at the edge, and then you actually had enough compute power to operate those systems there. But then what happens is we re-centralized a lot of that in the cloud computing world. The benefit of that was statistical learning, the massive amount of data required for what in DARPA we call the second wave of artificial intelligence, the deep learning statistical learning. Now, as you're going again back over into this 5G and 6G world, and that the ability for the edge compute, that's what we're calling the third wave of artificial intelligence, and that's contextual learning. So actually understanding your surroundings and having deep, low latency access to the localized data and to your individual user or application needs at the edge. So these are all part of the typical cycle of when do you communicate and when do you compute, and the cost of each of those is driving not only the technology decisions, but also the development of the AI and ML technology. That's really the core of the way that we're pushing all these systems together. So edge computing is a huge piece of that future, and something that we're certainly looking at from the DoD when we have austere conditions, when our reach back to the cloud is broken, when our ability to communicate is hindered. We also need to be able to take advantage of that kind of disconnected world ourselves as well. So both points of that matter to what we're going.
No, I think that's fair. That's fair. Yep. Okay. And again, I'm going a little quicker on questions, if that's okay. Not asking him. Okay. Maybe this one's for Amanda. We've asked for POCs. OTICs are doing all these kind of interoperability testing and all that. What SLAs or what checkpoints or what are you looking at that will make sure that it is on the path to commercialization versus just showing POC for the sake of POC? I think that was kind of one of the questions, yeah.
That's a great question. So I think for the test and evaluation laboratories, the sort of mark in the sand that we're putting for what means that they've been successful, that they were effective in what they've done, and the folks talked about it today, right, is understanding how they are a cost-effective model. Ian said it earlier, right? So how can they be sustainable at the same cost level after they're through with the funding, right? Mm-hmm. My hope would be that DISH would continue to be a resource, Viavi would continue to be a resource, as well as AT&T. And I think for some of the R&D efforts, the goalpost of quote-unquote transition or what is good, or, they're not necessarily commercial capabilities, but I see them being resources sort of in that testing environment. As I think to the future and what we're looking to invest in the very near term, really considering pushing how we address commercial adoption of technology. How do we bridge that gap, and how do we make sure that those partnerships are in place so that someone who is developing a piece of the RAN has a customer to buy said piece of the RAN, and driving home the importance there. So I will leave it at that, just because of competition sensitivity. But
yeah. I think that makes sense. I think I would probably you wanted to add? No, I was going to add, like, as an example, the other strategy that we had used for one of DARPA's project, Ops 5G, Open Programmable Secure, with I think JMS and Tejas, mm-hmm. was as the performers worked with open source, at the end of the cycle, there was a deliverable to make it back into an open source library. What that gave is an exit from a proprietary to an open, and it gave an ecosystem. So, I think Peraton Labs actually submitted a couple of projects like that. And I think the performers were very excited about that. So I think that's another path to making sure there's a checkpoint and it's not just code. It could be documentation. It could be, documentation has a, CCC license, I think. There are licenses for everything. Data sharing, it has a CDLA license, so it's the equivalent of Apache 2 or an MIT. So there are licenses for continuing the work in the community is kind of what I would add. But
yeah, I wanted to add, again, this, putting a historical perspective on this. Everybody thought they were predicting the killer app of the next generation wireless technology, and everyone was always wrong. The killer app always emerged after the technology was deployed and when the user base and community figured out what was useful here. The challenge that we have with 5G is that if we do have the flexibility of carving out, network slicing and resource sharing and management of all these potential new vertical markets, who's going to invest in the risk to go into those vertical markets without a proof of concept? So I'm actually defending that the concept of the POC that we've been investing in, and again from the DoD, Martin put this well earlier today. We're helping offset the risk of going into these markets because you knew at some point when you built an LTE chip that if it worked well and it was cost effective, you could sell 1 billion of those chips. But you design a new chip for a new market, that's minimum $100 million investment to get to a prototype. You're reaching $1 billion of investment before you can get that to a real product. Who wants to invest that amount of money themselves for markets that they don't know are going to actually succeed? That's the challenge that we have here, and again, that's where we come in to help us.
So you're supporting the path, but it has to be both ways. You've got to do the POC and then commercialization. You just can't jump to commercialization. Fair enough. All right, I think I'm going at the right speed. There's just a whole bunch of things. Okay, there's probably, SJ, you could take this one. We are always complaining that there is less people, less testing, we can't test enough, we can't code enough, blah, blah, blah. Why don't we use Gen AI techniques to accelerate coding, testing, documentation, things like that? I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but...
Well, you have to ask the AI question from me. So
after 25 minutes.
Well, if it works, it works, I would say. I'm very skeptical when it comes to that, so I'm not going to touch that aspect of it. But in terms of the workforce development, I think we have to address the hard issues. I think one of the earlier questions you asked about not enough students going into networking, but that is in general true. Not enough students going to electrical or computer engineering. And I think that problem we have to address as a society, as a country, at various levels. And I think and that's why when I mentioned that we need the partnerships for some of these programs, it's the bigger picture. It has several layers. For example, today, I'll give you one example. The current REU program at NSF, the research, the experience for undergrads. Now, surprisingly, that program will only fund students to do an internship in the university lab of a professor, not at an industry lab. So internally, I was surprised. So I was asking other program directors, why can't we fund through the REU program so that the students can actually go and work at Ericsson or Nokia or Qualcomm or startups doing an internship? It's not possible. So we have to modify. We have to come up with ways to modify those programs so that type of opportunities are possible. So there are many things that we can do, and and some of those because we never thought about it. So I think without taking too much time, what I would say is that there are many things we can do, and some of those they're really hard steps that we need to take, and we need to self-evaluate what we have been doing wrong, because somehow over the last 20, 30 years, we have corroded that the quality of education and workforce development. So we have to address it.
Although I would argue that it probably is already happening. People are probably already using it, even if it's just things like Copilot, or as an example of a tool that people use to help them with their code. So I think it's probably already there. I think the question for us is, one thing I've been very kind of strict on is the code provenance and code contributions and making sure that we understand them. And I think there is a trust and observability of some of these systems that we need to overcome or better understand and get into, or just make sure that you have the right infrastructure for testing and code coverage and the analysis tools to make sure that those contributions meet those standards that we're pushing hard to meet for the DoD's purposes.
Excellent, excellent. There are about 7 or 8 questions on how open source can jumpstart the ecosystem. I'm going to skip those. We have beaten that already in your presentations, in everybody. So if it is okay, yeah, I'm Linux Foundation, but I'm going to skip those questions, if that's okay.
And you can skip the AI ones, too.
So if we then get to maybe a wrap on the one big primary challenge you see still remaining, right? Like if in the next 3 months, 6 months, to realize this vision that we talked about, which, by the way, was brilliant, and thank you all for coming together as USG. If you had to pick one thing from your department perspective, like what would you want the audience here to take away? Like the next 6 months, short term. Feel free to take your time. I know you have not seen any of these questions because they just came.
I don't know whether it can be achieved in 6 months, but I think...
This year, how about 2024?
So I think one of the most important things when it comes to open source and Open RAN, I think what I say is some entity has to take the system integration, the responsibility, so that truly disaggregated multi-vendor Open RAN can be materialized. So that's kind of what I think.
Okay, yeah, and I think they were in your slides as well, so that's good. Thank you. Amanda, what's that one thing in 2024 that you would, like on Christmas, you would say, yeah, we got it?
NoFo 3 definitely is in my sights.
That's for everybody else.
Yeah, the red tape to get that out there. Yeah, so getting NoFo 3 out there, and I suppose the reveal I would get, it's not a huge reveal, I suppose, but thinking about the virtualization of the network, but also thinking about demonstrating the monetization of Open RAN. And to me, that seems critical. Without showing a true monetary value of why someone should go to open and interoperable is really the linchpin that we need to see. I don't know that we're going to see it in the next 6 to 12 months, but that you want to start that thought process. Okay, that's fair.
That's
Tom?
good.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I think for me, it's going to be defining what 6G means. I think we want to make sure that we have the vision within the U.S. that really settles, for our purposes, what 6G is going to mean and what it's going to do for us. And I'm sorry, it's not holographic communications and it's not the metaverse. It's not just more 4G. There's more to it that we're trying to craft here. And the way that we came about our joint statement on 6G was thinking about the advances that we've been making in 5G from a pure technical perspective. 10x more bandwidth, 10x lower latencies, 10x more dense machine type communications. And I always ask the question, why 10x? And the answer was because 10x is better. But there wasn't a market driver, there wasn't a commercial driver, to Amanda's point, that showed us there. But it did build technology that's giving us these excess resources that we can now we can figure out how to fill them and how to use them. But it also gives us a moment in time to actually look at things like additional security, like resiliency of the network, like additional privacy features baked into our protocols and our communication systems. Those are the kinds of things that we've been pushing for, and that came out of our joint statement. But now there's more details about how do we actually create this technology, how do we incentivize, and how do we make sure that the vision is clear for why these systems need to exist, and in this way supporting those kinds of values.
Okay, great. So 4 things: system integration, NoFo, monetization, and defining 6G. Now, there is a school of thought that given the tight collaboration between open source and open standards, And I'm talking about all the global standards, right? 3GPP, ORAN, ATIS, you name it, at sea. There's a school of thought that says code first, push it to standard. And then there is take your time, do your standards, and then prototype it so that it can be real. Any comments on that? Like, how would you want the industry to sort of behave, if you may? There's always that tension, right? Because nobody's going to wait for 6 years, but then nobody needs anything for 6 years. So there's a healthy tension, right? Like I was in a couple of other conferences, and most of the operators is like, don't talk about 6G right now. So there's a healthy tension there. So how do you see that?
Yeah, you're right. There's a tension there, and this how standards behaves and how the technology either influences standards or is influenced by the standards changes depending on which market you're actually talking about. In fact, there's actually a White House-led effort to understand standards and standardization. We're studying this right now and what it means. But when it comes to the cellular technologies, after 1G and then 2G, kind of had fragments around the world. 3G, a little bit more harmonization. 4G really harmonized this. So there's some baked-in biases in this industry for letting the standards lead, so that we have global interoperability. That's been key to this. But I would say that we've achieved that. We know how that works. I would rather start seeing the code taking more advantage of the code and the speed with which we can develop applications and create that innovation cycle, the righteous innovation cycle, to start really pushing the standards faster. I think that we're kind of a little too conservative now based on their 40-year history of trying to get to where we are today.
Fair enough. Very good. Okay, any closing comments? Maybe you want to go?
Well, I wanted to mention that I'm not saying that AI cannot work, but I'm just taking my time. So I would rather wait.
Oh, you thought through the question for the last 15 minutes.
That's right. So the reason why I was joking about that is that I think there's a lot of possibility in AI, machine learning, but I think as everybody now kind of realize, I think there's a lot of hype also. So we need to kind of rather than taking it as a hammer and going around looking for the nails, I think we need to actually make sure that it organically comes into a solution. So that's all I'm saying.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Any closing comments beyond that?
Well, I think this is a good start. I'm very happy that we have this workshop, and I hope that we can continue this dialogue, and certainly I would expect from both the open source community as well as the wireless community, you engage with all the government agencies, especially DoD, NTIA, DHS, and NSF. I think we really want to make sure that we do align our programs so that it actually best benefit all of you. And otherwise, it will not be really a success. I think our investment would not be a success if we don't have the buy-in from the community. So I think we really would want to continue this dialogue and hope that you guys engage.
Great.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. I feel like I've been on stage quite a bit today. The one thing I want to stress is, at least for my desire, is a need to move quickly. We talk a lot about standards and is it standards first or is it coding? I do feel a sense of urgency to move as quickly as we can to try to start to influence 5G before it's too late, so that 6G isn't such a big leap. And I would like industry to hopefully support that desire to be efficient and address some of these challenges as quickly as we can.
Beautiful.
I think I, for one, just want to thank the folks here, the Linux Foundation, my team for helping like craft the agenda and pulling this together and pulling all of these organizations together, so you can see that there's unified voice from the U.S. government for the need for working on this technology, for providing the leadership in this technology. You probably heard that each of us comes to this stage with a different desire out of working with an open source software base of a future G capabilities. So we're all selfish in our own interests from the departments and the agencies we come from, but those interests are aligning in the base technology platforms that we need to enable them to happen. That's now colliding with the open source community that's growing so much in its interest and its influence on commercial technologies and industry. And we in the U.S. government coming together with the Linux Foundation, providing that now the collaborative effort so that we're taking advantage of that and you're taking advantage of us. I think this is a really great moment in time for seeing all this stuff kind of come to fruition at this summit today. And so what I really want to make sure we're doing is continuing that conversation, continuing the engagements more regularly. We're working with NTIA on the Open RAN Symposium. That's the first annual one is going to happen in Boulder in September. We're working with folks in DC to have an open source workshop soon after that. A lot of opportunities for us to engage and to make sure that these conversations are continuing, the community is continuing to build, the ecosystem is generating the needs and the ideas. And so I think this has really been a great moment for us.
No, we have to thank you all for flying and helping drive the ecosystem here to sort of help all of us out globally. So thank you very much. A big round of applause, please. Thank you.